I would like a bit more clarity. I heard the Chief Minister advising or urging children 10 and over to wear masks when they go into town, for example. But yet in school, we cannot force or make it compulsory for children to wear masks. And I think maybe, I find myself sometimes in a situation where I'm surrounded by hundreds of children. I might be wearing a mask because I'm a more sort of mature of age, shall we say, of the teaching profession. So I'm wearing a mask, but there's hundreds of children around me going up the stairs who are not wearing masks, So I'm doing my best to protect them from myself, but they're not necessarily doing the best to protect me from them, and maybe I would like a bit more clarity on that and perhaps a bit more forcefulness, because whilst I recognise I'm not one to criticise the government at this moment in time, especially with what they're dealing with. I think it's unprecedented. I feel we all need to pull together. We need to be supportive, and I think it's very important. If I could offer one bit of constructive criticism is that, or maybe a bit more clarity on perhaps we should make children, when they're walking around in communal areas in school, to wear masks, because...
let's bring in the public health expert if we can.
I think it's a very difficult one, particularly around mandating mask wearing. I think where possible, strongly encouraging, educating people and, having them understand why it's important to wear them is always preferable to mandating. So yes, if we can avoid that, then we will. I think you touched on a really important point at the end there, actually, which is to pick the key risky times for wearing them. So certainly when you're circulating, moving in corridors, that's the time. And I think pushing wearing masks at those times is certainly a good way to go. And we can probably do more effort, make more effort on that part.
Literally because of the volume of people that could be infected if the virus was in the air there?
Yes, exactly. It's the mixing so whatever classroom bubble you were in before, by virtue of the fact that you've suddenly started mixing again, you've effectively broken. If it's a confined space, then you're coming into closer contact with people than you might have been when you were sitting still in a classroom, for example. So all of this is just about minimising risk as much as possible. We can't take it away entirely. And so, yes, I think focusing on those times is really key. And I know, for example, some schools have some classes, for example, IT classes in computer rooms, where it's much less easy to ventilate the space. And actually at that time, they have a policy of mask wearing, which is, within the school itself kind of mandated. And I think those kinds of things are progressive and actually the good way to go.
Just to clarify, Natalie, if I may, the reason why we are wearing masks in our ICT suites is because the air conditioning is on because of the systems.
Because they could overheat
equipment.
Right.
Yeah. And so we've made a policy decision on that in the secondary schools. In regards to, Charlie's aware of this, Minister Cortés has engaged with Dr. Batty, given the Chief Minister's recent announcement, and we're looking at reassessing the situation over midterm, depending on Dr. Batty's advice, whether or not any change will need to be made. In regard to that stance, but we will engage with the union as we've been doing and establish what the best way forward is.
And that would just be to revisit general COVID advice, but particularly perhaps mask wearing in secondary schools.
Yeah, and we've got a live document which we've made changes to as and when public health advice has developed or emerged, and so we will continue to revisit things as things develop in our community, and it's quite a fluid situation, I think, so and we're prepared to do that.
If I may say so, Jonathan, and it's not concern because I understand that so far, no one has been seriously ill as a result of infection, and I understand it's not so much because of that. It's the understanding that if we want to keep schools open, you've got to remember that every time one person gets infected, a whole lot of others have to isolate, and what we want to try and avoid is the people getting infected and having to isolate, as well as other people who have to isolate, because then we won't be able to keep schools open, and that's what we want to do.
Teachers are concerned about health, but a more sort of immediate risk might be not being able to continue with...
Exactly. We don't want to be isolating at home.
And the strain that other people feel, that the whole system feels when some people go off